Hello, my name is Kendra Phipps. I'm currently a student in the Department of Dairy Science at Virginia Tech. Today I'm going to be giving a presentation on poultry litter transport. So what exactly is poultry litter? Well, this is definitely something we need to understand if we're going to talk about poultry litter transport for obvious reasons. Poultry litter is basically a mixture of everything from the floor of a poultry barn. Much like you have to clean a hamster's cage when the bedding gets dirty, you also have to do the same thing with poultry. To understand what's in poultry litter, we need to discuss what I call the poultry litter life cycle. This begins when fresh sawdust or wood shavings is placed into the bottom of the poultry barn as bedding. While this bedding is in use, it collects feces, spilled chicken feed, or poultry feed, and lost feathers, among other things. After it has reached what the farmer deems as too dirty, it is ready to be cleaned out. This is your third picture, which is poultry litter. At this time, it can be composted or be sold immediately. People are transporting poultry litter to use it as fertilizer and feedstuff. It is used as fertilizer because, just like any other manure, it is rich in organic matter and also contains nutrients that crops need. I will go into detail with each of these in further slides. Poultry litter is used as fertilizer because of the nutrients available. These nutrients include nitrogen, phosphorus, calcium, and potassium. But just like any other manure, if applied in excess of what the crop and soil needs, excess nutrients can become pollutants, causing eutrophication and fish kills, among other things. An obvious positive of using chicken litter as fertilizer is the concept of reduce, reuse, recycle. We're reducing our footprint by using what we already have. We're reusing by using the chicken litter, like I said, that we already have. And some issues that face us when using chicken litter are the pollutants that it can cause. Now we're going to talk about what I think is the most interesting use of poultry litter, and that is when it's used as cattle feed. The nutritional value of this varies, obviously, depending on the diet of the bird, but it has been found that it also has to do with the environment. There was some data that is also on the University of Missouri's extension page that talks about this, that shows nutritional values of poultry litter from Georgia and Alabama. And it's interesting to look at because the moisture varies and the crude protein varies and such because of the varying diets, also due to the varying environments. Now, when you're discussing regulations as far as poultry litter, there's not very much to discuss because there are currently no federal regulations on feeding poultry litter to cattle. However, when the BSE outbreak began, there was a temporary ban on feeding poultry litter to cattle just to determine its effect on BSE. This was obviously determined to be not relevant as the ban has been lifted. Some issues when using poultry litter as feed include possible pathogens. This is often due to deceased birds being composted into the litter. And these birds, obviously, as they decompose, there's E. coli and salmonella. But this can be reduced by, obviously, not including deceased birds in your poultry litter. Another issue is antibiotic residue. There have been some studies on this, but honestly, according to the Extension's website, the most effective way to avoid any issues stemming from antibiotic residue when feeding poultry litter is just to use a withdrawal time. Do not feed to any cattle that will be slaughtered within the coming 21 days. So who's doing it? Who's transporting poultry litter? Well, if you use your common sense, that's a fairly easy question to answer, but you can also delve deeper into it, as we will later in this discussion. Farmers are obviously the ones transporting litter, most of the litter, whether it be within their farm or having bought it from another farm. An excess of poultry litter in poultry-producing counties has led to incentives such as the one in Virginia for people in non-poultry-producing counties to buy and transport the litter out of those. For example, the Virginia one has created the incentive of paying those who buy litter originating only from Rockingham and Page counties $15 per ton if the buyer meets certain criteria. There are also criteria that you have to be aware of for the chicken litter. For instance, there can be no deceased birds in the chicken litter. If it is found that there are deceased birds in the chicken litter that you have bought, you will no longer be eligible for the incentive. There's also something pretty neat going on in Baltimore. Well, not exactly in Baltimore, in Maryland, with Purdue Agri-Recycle. I think Dr. Knowlton has done another presentation on this, but we'll find out later. But Purdue Agri-Recycle is a company ran by Purdue, obviously, that buys chicken litter from the eastern shore of Maryland and then turns it into pelleted fertilizer. And excuse me, I misspoke a second ago. I meant poultry litter, as there are some turkey houses. Now, this is where you get to use your problem-solving skills, because we're going to discuss the challenges of transporting poultry litter. A fun fact about my source that I used for this particular slide: my family has been using poultry litter, specifically chicken litter, and that's why you will hear me call it that on accident a few times throughout this presentation, for probably the past 7 years on our operation. And that requires us to go about 40 miles away, which is something I will discuss later. So the source for this slide, in particular for me, was my father. So the first and most obvious challenge when thinking about transporting poultry litter is locating any. For example, as I said before, my county is not a poultry producing county. So when my family decided we wanted to utilize poultry litter, we had to look around, and we knew there was quite a few poultry operations below the mountain. So we looked down there and we found one. We found one that was willing to sell litter. So something that's also difficult for some people when they decide to transport litter is finding a truck to use. This can be difficult because not everyone owns a dump truck, and you don't necessarily have to have a dump truck, but it needs to be something with a large bed, and it needs to be efficient and reliable. Now, when I say efficient, I don't mean exactly fuel efficient, because that's going to be pretty hard to come by, but it does have to carry enough to make your trip worthwhile wherever you're going. Timing is the largest challenge by far when discussing transporting poultry litter. The litter may not always be available when you need it. In some cases, if the farm is selling in a different region than where you are, it becomes necessary to plan ahead, because their region may begin applying manure before yours does, since their growing season might be a little different. So you will likely need to plan ahead and purchase litter during their spreading season. Another timing issue is finding a seller whose schedule aligns with yours to load the litter. For example, my father is not a full-time farmer. He also has a job during the day, so it would often be evening, the time before he would be able to make it down the mountain to load the litter. And this was sometimes difficult because by the time he was able to go to pick up the litter, the people that own the poultry operation had decided that they were done for the day. So this could sometimes obviously cause some problems and challenges. Now, the funniest challenge that my father spoke of when we were talking about this is the dirty looks you get from people you meet on the road because of the awful smell coming from your vehicle. To conclude our presentation, poultry litter is not just feces. It also includes bedding such as sawdust or wood shavings, feathers lost from any poultry, or spilt feed. There's also more than one use for poultry litter, the obvious one being fertilizer for crops, but it is also used as feedstuff for cattle. There are two main groups involved when discussing the transport of poultry litter: businesses such as Purdue Agri-Recycle and farmers. There are also several challenges to consider when discussing the transportation of poultry litter, such as the timing of when you're going to transport, how you're going to transport, where you're going to get it, and how you're going to deal with those darn dirty looks from the cars you meet on the road.